Traffic used to be much cheaper. The CPM just skyrocketed.
The traffic manager has the mindset of a mad scientist. They're always wanting to test things.
It was the experience with the manager that allowed me to start learning the first scales, and today the differentiator is volume.
Rodrigo Michelon, an entrepreneur who has always sought paths outside the traditional to build his journey. After facing major challenges in a physical business, he found a new opportunity in the digital world, and he turned his experience into great results. In just a few years, Rodrigo built million-dollar operations in the app and nutraceutical markets, reaching multiple 8 figures in revenue.
Welcome everyone to Segredos do Tráfego, which is going to be the podcast, the biggest paid traffic podcast in Brazil, maybe even in the world. Today, we're basically making our debut. It's like this is the second episode, but it's actually the first episode of Segredos do Tráfego here at DirectAds with a friend of mine, Rodrigo Michelon. Hey, Rodrigo, welcome.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you for accepting the invitation.
Thank you. I'm the one who should thank you for the invitation. And let's talk a bit for everyone about what's working, the real things in the market, right? No guru talk, just what's actually working.
Just to give everyone some context, like I told you, what is Segredos do Tráfego going to be, guys? It's going to be a podcast focused on bringing in traffic operation managers. So it's not a podcast that's always bringing in the business owner who often doesn't even know what's going on anymore. So you go to events, you chat with the guy, and he has no idea what's going on with the traffic. Oh, that's with my manager. I don't really know what's up with that. They just exchange some generic information. They say, oh no, we just launched the Baiana scale. We launched CBO. But okay, how does CBO work? Like, are you just clicking a different button? Are you increasing the budget at a specific time? That's something only a traffic manager does, right? I'm in traffic management too, and Lucão here is also in traffic. So that's the idea for us to focus more on the perspective of those who are managers. So we're only going to bring in managers, 2 from operations without managers, which is something we were just talking about today. It's a differentiator. I think the market is heading back in that direction.
Yes. And
to start, I'd like to understand a bit better how you got started. Obviously, there's a long story with copy traffic. At the beginning, everyone does everything. But how did you get into traffic management? What did you learn? What was your source? What are you most specialized in today?
Today, my main focus, just so everyone understands, is that I run an operation. So we have a significant team of people. But even though for a very long time I had already mastered this valuable copywriting skill, I eventually realized in today's competitive market that generating traffic is truly the current 80-20 principle that matters most. So in a market where copywriting has become more of a commodity, where everyone knows what the other is running, traffic ends up making more sense for someone running a scale-focused operation, an operation focused on scaling. So talking a bit about the beginning, this experience goes back a while, already more than 2 years. So back then, in the beginning, the focus was Facebook, and today my main specialty is really with Facebook.
You started out on Facebook. How was that? Did you start off by buying a course? How did you get started there? On Facebook?
So since I had a physical business before, I was already following the whole traffic thing closely because I understood it was really important. So when I got into digital, I immediately bought courses that helped me. Yes, but it was really the hands-on experience in the ads manager that allowed me to start learning how to scale for the first time. So in the beginning, there were those difficulties. You'd set up an account, it would get shut down, ads would get rejected, and I didn't really understand what I needed to do to get things running, especially when dealing with more sensitive niches. So it was really right there. Trial and error to finally start making those first sales.
From your point of view, at that time, what was the 80% of the traffic that made it possible to make things work? How did you get your first results? What did you do differently?
At that moment, I believed that copy was just as important as traffic. Not that copy isn't important, it is important. However, it was much more a matter of just being able to run the ads. In a simple way, you could already make sales. The market, in terms of, as a traffic source, it wasn't as sophisticated as it is now today. Today we have this issue of things getting tighter regarding platform rules. So for example, with the use of AI and all that, the platforms have been tightening things up a bit.
It's getting harder and harder
to run ads. So accounts last less time, everything is more difficult. Back then, if you launched an ad that was even minimally good, you could already make sales. as if
it were just an image, right?
even just an image. In the beginning, even GC's videos performed really well without much difficulty. So that's more or less how it was.
And do you think that was because traffic was cheaper or because the market was different?
Traffic was much cheaper back then. The CPM just skyrocketed. So nowadays, there are markets where CPM is 10 times more expensive. In other words, the cost for me to advertise can be up to 10 times higher. So at that time, it was cheaper for me to show that ad to more people. It was cheaper for me to display that ad I had made, for example. And today, that's much more expensive and more complicated. So back then, it was easier to get things running than it is today. And
just to give some context about Kim, who is Rodrigo for everyone, right? Like today, he has an operation. He's really leading the traffic. But up until 6 months ago, when we talked, you were focused on copy, right? When we were in Switzerland.
yes,
I said, man, I focus on copy because no one can replicate copy. And why do you think that today in 2026, what month are we in? June? Almost June, right? Yeah, June.
now it's already June.
It's already June. Today is May 30th, right? Tomorrow is June 1st. And what do you think has changed about copy since 6 months ago when we were there in the system exchanging ideas? You said, man, for me, it's more important. I can't find good copywriters. So that's still a major pain point in the market today.
Yes. And
Traffic, you say, man, now it has to be traffic because it's not working anymore if it's not traffic.
yes. Just so people understand a bit, the market changes very quickly. So as an operations owner, we have to keep an eye on the market and especially on those who are scaling a lot. So that's the first point. We have to be analyzing what's happening in the market. And up until that moment, things worked a little differently than they do today. One example is today, everyone knows what everyone else is running. So people already know about the spy tools. Everyone already knows what the other is running. So copywriting at this point kind of became a commodity. Many times when someone starts to scale, there are already countless operations running that same VSL. Before there were gentlemen's agreements, so this happened less often. So with this increase in cannibalization, many times people are running the same offers, even with the same creatives. So what explains, for example, one person runs the same offer with the same creative as another, and one makes a profit while the other doesn't. So from this point of view, the only thing that separates these two people is the traffic. And I've seen this happen a lot. That's why we started to focus much more on traffic, especially by also looking at the operations that are scaling the most right now. They're no longer just operations in general. There can definitely be exceptions. It's a market where there are several exceptions. But in general, the biggest operations at the moment, when it comes to scaling operations, their basic premise is to focus on media buying.
Actually, I was even chatting with him about this over lunch, guys. I really should switch this podcast around because we talk about most things at lunch and then have to repeat them here. But in the past, there was no operation without copywriting and traffic. Today, back then, without networking, events, which used to be all about events. So what do? There are two partners. Who's the copywriter and who's the traffic manager? It's a normal question. And it happened like I was in Dubai, went to chat with Andre. By the way, shout out to Andre. Yeah, Andre Carvalho from NW Media. I asked, man, are you the copywriter or the traffic manager? He said, I'm the traffic manager. And Lucas, who's your partner? I'm also the traffic manager. I said, wait, you're two partners, both traffic managers? She said, yeah, I handle Google and I handle Facebook. And what about copy? Who's the copywriter? He said, the copywriter is the producer. Because nowadays in the market, there's the producer who creates the offers or shapes the offers and kind of like to go to the top affiliates, which is his case. The guy's even set up a copy squad for you. So he said, man, I have a producer there. We're really close. And the guy does the copy for us. So the guy writes microlit for us, edits, creates, and even develops different products. So for those who don't know, Rodrigo also worked in info, right? Yeah. But today in the market, even the product itself is kind of an 80-20 for people, right? So if you're a top affiliate, you ask the producer to change the product, or in other words, not to run the product. Since everyone runs it, that makes a difference. So the guy literally focused on the 80-20, which is traffic nowadays because of the reasons you mentioned, and he delegated the copy part to the team. That's really crazy, man, because it changed everything completely.
Yeah. It's just that, especially when talking about the current market, which is really split between, as we were saying before, companies that either offer affiliation and others, right, that take on this affiliation and focus on scaling. So I believe that producers themselves have already realized that what they need are good media buyers
And
not good copywriters, because copywriters, they can hire themselves, as you said, to help these affiliates scale further. Because yes, it's important. Copy is important, as is refreshing creatives, microleads, VSLs. But like I said before, why are there people running the same thing and getting different results? Because they are media buying strategies, which are different. And with copy, it's much easier to know what someone is doing. There on Skype, searching in the library.
that's true, isn't it? Yeah.
The person goes to the library, starts searching, and can already, it's very easy to understand what it is. The other person is running it.
I hadn't thought about that. True. It makes sense.
And now, when it comes to traffic, because even if we're talking about a really advanced spy tool, you'll be able to maybe know what the guy is running there on an ad account.
But you won't know the exact percentage they're increasing the budget by. And
And what if the guy is running 1,000 ad accounts? If guy is running 200, 300, 1,000 ad accounts, you don't know. You don't know what time. You don't know what time he's
launching the campaign.
exactly what time he's activating it, what time he pauses it. Anyway, there are countless strategies there that they could be offers that you won't have access to. Contingency, for example, how is this guy managing to maybe make accounts last?
To keep the account running, right? To really hold it.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, really. Like basically, traffic is the backstage, right? Like the copy is the stage. Everyone sees the offer. The creative is the face of the offer, and so on. The face of the offer, and so on. But the traffic guy is the one behind the scenes. No one really knows what he's actually doing.
Exactly. And I think, especially talking about the current market, which isn't easy because everyone we know keeps saying, oh, it's dropping. A lot of Facebook and YouTube accounts, for example, people are having a really hard time running them. But how is it that there are people who are managing to run them?
Yes.
Do you get it? So like
that mindset is cool, right? For the traffic manager.
Exactly. If there are people who are able to run them, then it means there's some strategy you just don't know yet. So there's no point in having a validated copy if you can't run and scale it.
It's possible, right? Yeah, this is a mindset, guys. That's interesting. And I've even changed it myself. I've talked about this with several traffic managers in our operation back when we had a stronger operation and all that. Man, you can't run it. But how is that guy scaling? Like, you have to get a little indignant about it. Man, if that guy's running it, I want to know what the heck he's doing to make it work, you know? Otherwise, it just doesn't, you have to get a little obsessed, right? Obsessed with the traffic there.
Exactly.
Because otherwise it just doesn't work out. And a lot of times the manager, speaking for myself, right? So I don't talk about anyone else. I was one of those guys in the beginning. I kind of gave up. I started out on Facebook. I tried to run ads, but I couldn't get it to work. This was, 3 or 4 years ago. I'd make accounts, they'd get shut down. I'd start profiles, they'd get banned. I'd launch pages, they'd get taken down. Then I started studying contingencies. I learned about multi-logins, etc. Proxy. Then you start refining your approach. You realize the rabbit hole goes even deeper. You think, damn, you need a proxy, you need multi-login, you have to warm up a profile, buy a profile from someone you know. Then you start discovering other strategies, right? Today, from my point of view, the 80-20 of a contingency structure, you can even give your opinion, is the business manager, the ad account. So either get an agency account that already has a good score or get a business manager with some spend, which solves the problem. Profile, you need to have at least a decent one. Buy a profile from someone or use your own profile. Personally, I like to use multi-login. I don't know if you use it there.
Yeah.
We like to separate with proxies. I've seen people who use it on Chrome, so welcome. The guy is so hardcore that he uses it on Chrome. What's your point of view on contingency that you think is cool?
Well, first of all, we have to look at what the person's goal is, what the operations goal is. Is it to scale or just to run a small product? That's what determines the decisions you're going to make. Because when we talk about scaling, we're talking about high volume, especially today, considering how most campaign scaling is done. For example, the
Bahian scale. Just to clarify, what does scaling mean to you? Starting when? To give people an idea?
scaling up,
Which is subjective, right?
right?
Per day, in terms of monthly investment.
I think at least when talking about scaling per day, spending at least 100,000 reais a day,
Per day.
daily spend. So like if you're running 10, 20, 30,000 reais a day, you don't need a lot of structure. So, for example, for someone who's just starting out, you don't need such a robust structure, right? It's not something the guy can run it with a profile on Chrome. However, when we're talking about many accounts at a higher scale, multiple 6 figures, 7 figures per day, those are scales that require a lot of volume, a lot of account volume, a lot of profile volume. It's a much more robust structure, but then that's why I said it. You have to understand where you are at to know what decisions you need to make, because the guy can't freeze up because he's just starting out and then he hears this and thinks he needs to.
But it is robust, right?
Contingency team.
Yes.
When the guy is just starting out in the market, now for the guy who's already running, he already has more cash flow. He's already trying to scale up more robustly. So at that point, he already needs to better structure this whole process. But over there, we use it like this, with multi-log, with proxy, everything isolated. We have many profiles, many accounts, many BMs, because that's necessary to achieve a more significant scale nowadays. So we also see that the people who are scaling the most today, especially since we just had the event and, well, we heard a lot of things and took the opportunity to talk to a lot of people. And today, the differentiator is volume. The people who are scaling the most have a lot of volume. There are many accounts, many profiles running at the same time together in order to achieve a significant daily spend. And
from your technical point of view, just so people have an idea, to give some context about Rodrigo as well. He runs operations that have billed multiple 8 figures. He's a guy who's never shown up publicly, but he came here because he's my friend. So I invited him. I pulled the guy out of his cave. So what he's saying here is really relevant. And from your point of view, why do you think things have changed so much from this year on? Paid traffic and that so-called Bayesian scaling, which is 1.51, 2.51. Everyone already knows how that works. Yesterday, we heard about the Soviet scaling, which is using a bunch of ad accounts. Why do you think it changed so much like that? What happens when you use this kind of scaling?
I think it changed mainly because the auction, that is the traffic sources, started to become more inflated. There are more people advertising. And the people who were already advertising are now advertising much more, investing much more. If we think about a few years ago, 3 years ago, a strong scaled operation, how much would such an operation spend? 30,000 reais per day, right? At most, right? They managed to invest. They made
30,000 reais?
They made 30K daily, a million
in a month.
They were a king. The guy would invest 15,000, 20,000 reais a day, right? On Facebook, he'd make about 30. So that was a scaled operation 3 years ago. Today, there are already people out there investing more than $1 million a day in spend and expenses. So it's completely different now. So what does this cause? Inflation. Because the number of people in the world hasn't increased that abruptly. The number of social media users or
market players.
Exactly. Players are something that keeps rotating, right? It keeps rotating because there are people entering the market and people leaving the market. So even if there is an increase, there are also people leaving. But this increase in investment volume, to me, is what changed the traffic the most. Because what happened? It got much more expensive. So for example, speaking about the United States, maybe if you used to pay for a click there before, 3 or 4 reais, let's talk in reais, how much were people paying? 20 reais, 25 reais, 30 reais. And then they discovered this, for example, the Bayesian scale, which is nothing more than a method to make this cheaper. By somehow bypassing this auction, I believe it's basically by placing micro bids, where you set such a small budget that Facebook might try to find a way to spend your money. Maybe that's the reason you can make the auction a bit cheaper to give you a chance there, right? And when you do this, you can really reduce your cost per click, your CPM. It basically gets cut in half, and the cost per click is often 3 times lower, for example. So it makes it possible to invest much more. It allows you to scale a lot more. But it also requires more structure in terms of contingency, right?
Yeah, much more robust, right?
Much
more robust. Both in terms of creative rejection, right? Because if you run a very aggressive creative and you get a rejection, it won't just be one campaign. It'll be 50 all at once.
Yes.
And also in terms of ad account structure, right? We were even talking about that, like scaling up the Bayana method. It's affecting my accounts. It depends. If you're following a process of warming up your account, of showing that this behavior is normal for your account, because usually it gets flagged for unusual activity.
Unless
the creative is very aggressive and gets flagged for misleading advertising, So if you train your account, the meta ads there, like you launch ads the way we guide people to do in DirectAds. You launch a 1, then a 10-1, then a 5-8-1, and now 3 campaigns with 5-8-1. 10, 20, and you keep showing that this is a pattern of behavior. What exactly is unusual activity, just so everyone understands? Basically, it's Facebook protecting you from being hacked. So it's actually a good thing, right?
Yes.
Like it's an anti-fraud system. Let's say you have your card registered on your account. Someone hacks your Facebook and launches 500 campaigns on an account that never did that before. Then it's like, hey, this guy here is a hacker.
There's something wrong? Yeah.
It's something unusual. That's usually what happens, right? I've already talked in a Facebook chat and they said, no. Did you launch these accounts? Was it really you who launched them? Wasn't it? It was me. And another hack also about warming up, right? What we're saying is this. If you warm up your account by sending it to a link, a page you usually don't run, and you run the conversion to another link, think about it from Facebook's perspective. It says, hey, this guy here is launching a lot of warming up campaigns to a link that has nothing to do with it. And what he actually runs is here. That's a common activity.
Yes.
So ideally, you should already be warming up by sending traffic to your own structure, to your main page, your VSL, your quiz, your pre-sale page, your advertorial. You already send it to the same link. Obviously, you're going to use a much less aggressive creative to make sure it gets approved. Exactly, to ensure approval, whether with a cloaker or not, that depends on the level of aggressiveness of the BCL. So these are some little tricks that the traffic manager needs to have. I usually say in the operation that the traffic manager has the mindset of a mad scientist. Which is what? Always wanting to test things?
Yes.
Man, if something happens, you figure it out, investigate. Man, the account got shut down, right? Why did it get shut down? And never give up, because if the guy just says, oh, I can't run it, and throws in the towel, and then it goes back to what we were saying, right? Like, how is this guy scaling? What is this guy doing? So you even have to launch a feature there in the direct messages. Edson, right? Which is, there are some things to inform. Who's making the changes? First, it's about cleaning up the account. So when it gets rejected, we already switch to white, and then it's going to help a lot of people out there in their daily routines, right? That doesn't exist yet, guys, but
they said it will happen.
And man, this is already pretty obvious. I told the guys at the event, we were at the Affiliate Brazil event, and I mentioned it to everyone, and they thought it was really cool. There are people who don't even delete it, right? But it's something, guys, that if you don't have it, you need to do it. You always have to be checking there. And it's something that most people don't do. Do you take good care of your setup? What is your contingency process like over there? Are you always nurturing multiple accounts? How does the workflow go, the process itself?
So just so people understood a bit, the first time I scaled my first 100K in a day was in 2024.
And
I had 2 ad accounts.
That's crazy.
2 ad accounts. And I was already able to scale like that. And today, for someone to talk about scaling to 100,000 in a day, they probably won't be able to do it with less than 15 accounts. Why? Because accounts will get shut down. So you already need to be prepared to spread out your structure. At this kind of scale, and for the inevitable shutdowns that will happen.
Not that you use all 15 accounts at the same time, right?
You might not use them all, but in my operation, for example, we have way more accounts than that being used and also being warmed up, so we can keep a significant daily spend. And that's where DirectAds comes in, because how do you optimize the use of so many accounts? So that's something we had more trouble with before you launched the tool. Because trying to use all of them at the same time became very complicated. You would also have to hire more people. So it's a way to organize things better and to optimize the team more, right? There's no need to waste people on that. So it's really about that, you know? Today, volume is very important. And being able to manage that volume in a clear way is also very important.
It's something we were really strict about with that, you know? So much so that basically DirectShed, it was something where I brought my operation into the tool itself, right? I've always been really into traffic and picky about contingencies. So I always wanted to know how many accounts I had in stock to rank them. Which accounts have the highest spending? What's the currency of the account that had that transition from dollars to reais? So what's the timing? The accounts zone as well. So over there in DirectShed, I'm not sure if you've seen this part, there's a section for account contingency. Everything is shown in a table there. So if, say, one account goes down, you can easily see which one is next. The account I'm going to bring online. Actually, I just had an idea. Later on, we could add something because this account has a lot of spending, but it's not performing anymore.
Yeah, that happens.
Can we do that? Luca, I'm just giving you a heads up. Maybe add a little tag there. Like the person gives the account a rating A, B, or C. That's cool, right? Yeah.
Really good. You
already tag your best accounts there manually, like this one is an A account. So I'll test creatives. I'll just test on this account here because it's usually easier to validate. Anyway, but what about today, man? How are you actually scaling now? Like how many accounts are you running at the same time? When it comes to traffic, are you running more CBO, ABO, Bitcap? Like technically we're talking to a traffic manager here, man. You're teaching me. How do I start an operation? I'm a manager. I want to test this thing out here. How are you doing it today? Yeah.
That today. Yeah, just so people understand too, the reason I started focusing a lot more on traffic again,
Because
we run a lot of things. We have several branches within the operation. So for example, I have the traditional info products branch. I have the apps branch, which we already have today, over 7 digits in MRR.
and
We also have the nutraceutical affiliate branch. So each of these operations, they have differences. I wouldn't say differences, but they have peculiarities. So we started to understand how to work within each of them. For example, if I'm going to run in the United States, I'm going to use the Bayana scaling method much more. If I have, for instance, in my app operation where I can run worldwide, I can still make better use of CBO. I can use BidCap, for example, but that's something we've never scaled with. And I don't know anyone who actually scales using BidCap. I'm going to say something that might go against what people are saying these days. But real scaling, which is what we're talking about here, over 100,000, 200,000, 300,000, 500,000 a day, I don't know anyone who's doing that using BidCap. Those who are doing it today, in general, are using the Bayana scaling method, and also still a lot of CBO in some cases. The traditional CBO, right? With advantage and all that. So since we have these different approaches, each one runs in its own way. So as I was saying, around the world, I can still use CBO a lot. But in the United States, since it's very expensive, the auction is really inflated. I need to do this volume of accounts using the Bayana scaling method. 1.
a quick message. If you still don't know what DirectChats is, basically, DirectChats is a tool for you to hide your offers, hide your creatives, and launch campaigns in bulk very quickly. So if you're into the Bayana scaling, Soviet scaling, or need to launch a lot of campaigns and creatives per day, try out DirectChats. Click the link in the bio. Got it. And with CBO, for example, I noticed that there are some specific niches where, for instance, ED, the Bayana scaling, doesn't work as well, precisely because the CPC is already very cheap. Did you notice that too? Or do you guys differentiate by niche, like for strategic purposes? Or is it just an isolated metric? Yeah.
In this case, I don't really share that view because we've already scaled and have offers running very well. Now, the
ED and
Bayana scaling, however, we always have the mindset to test things. So I agree, the click is cheaper in ED, and that's why we tested it. Tested CBO, tested BidCap, we're always testing. So like we usually test the offers, talking about the United States, in ABO, Bayana scaling, and when we find something that makes sense, the first thing is the managers need to test the structures. So he's going to do a pre-scaling now. In Bayana scaling, he's going to start increasing the number of these campaigns, and he'll also run campaigns in CBO, in BidCap, to try to understand if there's potential there. Because like you said, the traffic manager, traffic in general, has to be testing. They can't just get comfortable with something. Things change very quickly. And if you discover something that's working before everyone else, you can scale up a lot more.
And it's funny because it's just a little button inside the ads manager that changes everything. Let me give you an example. It's not a magic button, man. Unfortunately in traffic, or maybe fortunately, right? Sometimes yes, but not always, right? There isn't going to be a magic button that suddenly lets you scale, but sometimes it does happen. A classic example is the catalog crowd. The whole catalog thing started to go viral, uploading it, because it really increased the approval rate of creatives. I think that was the main reason, unless I'm mistaken. There's also the matter of hiding your creative, so I think that helped too. But in the beginning, a lot of people didn't know how to run the catalog. They kept complaining that the catalog doesn't perform, the catalog doesn't perform. And there were some of our clients who were scaling like crazy. Top players in the market were scaling like crazy with the catalog. And they kept quiet. Nobody said anything. And later people found out like, wow, but the catalog didn't work for me. I don't know if you made this mistake in your operation, but there was a little button there to prioritize the video or the catalog at the campaign level as well. It performs much, much better than the catalog at the ad level. So I tell the managers there in the operation, man, you have to be constantly poking around and clicking all the little buttons and asking, okay, what does this do? I'm going to test this different little button here. Because sometimes things change, right? Advantage at the time was something that changed a lot of things. This keeps happening from time to time.
This thing about the catalog, it's even funny you mentioned it. Maybe you don't remember, but when the catalog first came out and became popular, there were a lot of people using it without saying anything.
Yeah.
Then, when it started to become popular, we went to run the first catalog tests and the delivery was really bad. We couldn't get a relevant delivery for the video. We ended up delivering a lot of images. And then I messaged you and you told me there's a prioritize video option and there's another setting here too. We did that and it changed things a lot. So that's exactly it. Sometimes it's just a button you don't realize will make a difference in your operation.
And today, what is the actual traffic process flow like? A batch of creatives arrives, say 10 creatives. How do you test them? Do you test for 1 day, 2 days in normal ABO, in CBO? What is the process like for you? How does it work there?
We test ABO, beta is Bayana scaling. And basically the creatives run on that first day, the creatives that are within the benchmark for each niche. And then there's this particularity of the niche. The managers will look at it at the end of the day and understand what sold and what performed. Very interesting metrics that make sense to carry over to the next day, even if there were no sales. So like anything that's way outside the benchmark, for example, if there was an initiate checkout and it's costing too much or the CPC is too high, those creatives don't even make it to the second day.
That order of importance. So sales, CPC.
Sales are always the first priority.
Sales are number one.
Sales are number one. How much is this sale costing? Then we look at the checkout. I see. And then CPC, hook rate, action, the secondary metrics.
The metrics?
Completely secondary. We also look to try to understand the pattern of the winners, but the main thing is always the sale. But if there's a really good IC, we understand that there's still potential. Maybe the sale just doesn't happen. Maybe there's some variable there that we can't see. So it might be that on the second day it performs, yes. So that's what we do. If it sells, it goes to the second day. And there are those other interesting metrics that also go to the second day, right?
All right, we take that creative that sold. So for example, you launch 10 creatives, you launch 10 campaigns on 51. I've seen some people who run with $1 and people who run 1.2, 1.3, $2. How do you do it there? Yeah.
Around 1.3.
1.3. So it's already changed a little bit there. That's what I say. Yeah, sometimes I say, that's why I say this is going to be a podcast that really gets into the details of things because it makes a difference. It really does.
It's just at this point, whether it's $1 or 1.3, maybe doesn't make that much difference in performance.
Yes.
So we set it a little higher there so we could spend more.
I see.
So we could spend more on the campaign because it ends up being less divided. Because whether you like it or not, if I'm at 1.3 instead of 1, I'm able to spend 30% more on that campaign. So I can have campaigns that spend more.
And today, for example, is there a new strategy that people are using? Very few people are using it. Let me open it here, which is to set a spending limit per ad set. Do you know about this? Did you get to test it?
We tested it, but it's something we tried very recently. We haven't scaled it in that sense, but it did show some interesting results. Do you have any?
With Insight, right? The Bayana scaling in CBO.
Yes, with a spending limit.
With a spending limit. So yes, there is. Some people I saw using it were starting to get results. Interesting. They even asked about it, right? We know because people asked like, hey, is it possible to set a spending limit in DirectAds? Before you couldn't, but now you can. Now you can set a spending limit per ad set, which kind of forces the CBO to spend on other ad sets.
Exactly. And
I don't know if you got to test it. How was your experience
there? So first of all, I tried to understand a bit more about the reasoning behind it. I believe that some people are able to get results this way because in theory, CBO should be a smarter campaign than ABO.
People said ABO was going to die long ago, no?
Yeah, so there's that point. They said it was going to die, but in theory, CBO is a smarter campaign.
Yes.
So essentially, they're applying the very same strategy as Bayana.
Psych.
The same psychology, the same foundation in CBO, considering that maybe it's a smarter campaign and setting limits there to make those micro bids as well, kind of in the same sense, to make Facebook spend there, to give your offer a chance for your budget. So, like I said, it's something that's pretty recent. We haven't scaled this way yet, but it has shown some interesting results. So, it just doesn't make sense for me to say that it works really well or that it's something
like that.
Since we haven't scaled this way, but we're always testing, and it has shown interesting results.
Okay, cool. So, for example, going back to your testing flow there, you ran the creative test, 10 creatives, 10 campaigns. It sold. Does that creative already need to sell at a profit? Or not, just the fact that it sold for you? Is that already a super important metric? And will you already try to scale that creative in some way?
No, the fact that it sold is relevant for it to run on the second day.
But
to take it to a pre-scaling phase, it has to be within our niche benchmarks. So, for example, cost per sale, cost per checkout, it has to be within those rates that we set there. Because otherwise, when I start to
scale,
for example, the manager goes there, he duplicates those campaigns 5 times to try to do an initial pre-scaling to understand the potential of that creative. If it's already selling with a very tight margin, it's probably going to make you lose money, or it will just break even. Anyway, I don't really think it makes much sense to waste a lot of time on that ad. For me, it makes more sense to test more ads and focus on the best ones.
I see. So it's not just about making sales. Even if it's sold with a positive ROI, you still won't move on to pre-scaling. It depends on the other metrics and controls you have there. The niche matters too. That's important. So you can decide whether it should be scaled up, but you let it run for a second day, at least to gather more metrics.
And actually, yes, like I said, what really matters is making sales. So if it made sales on the first day and on the second day it sold again and the cost per sale is good, I won't even pay much attention to the other metrics.
So
it doesn't matter that it just sells. It has to sell with profit. That's the point. But what I mean is if it's already tight, already on the second day, it's selling. Okay.
It's selling with an ROE, but like 1.1.
There.
Let's say it's an affiliate. Yeah.
It's there, 1.1, 1.2. Man, if I try to scale this ad, it's not going to perform. Because it would have to give me a rows there, 1.1, 4, 1.3 when scaling. And if it's already tight there on the, that's you considering a pretty average number, right?
Mm-hmm.
A pretty average number there as an affiliate. But if it's already quite tight there now, then it doesn't really have the potential to scale up effectively in the future.
This is important because there are people who, made a sale with the ROAS and then the guy wants to scale up and it turns into the hope scale, right? Man, but it sold yesterday with a 1.2, but all the other metrics were bad. It could have just been a lucky sale.
So exactly. And then it can really happen that the guy loses way more money than he should in these tests. Because then if it sold there, 1.1, 1.2, he thinks, wow, I think I can scale this up with no real basis. What could happen when he starts trying to scale that? He's going to take a loss. So he spent more than he should have because he pushed a bad product forward.
Got it. And for example, you said you sell info, apps, and Nutra.
Yes.
In info. What is your average ticket today, roughly?
Roughly 320.
350.
Dollars or reais? No, reais. In info, it's lower.
Okay, 350 reais. So a basic scale is $50, right? $1 per set, $50. It's actually a little more than that, right? Because a little more than that. About $75, right? A little more than that. About 30% more. Yeah, no, $65. If I correct myself, you'll think I'm screwed. Yeah. $65 there, and your average ticket is about 350 in raise, divided by 5. What does that come to? About 50 something, right? So it's basically almost 1-to-1, right? Like an average ticket for a budget amount. I'm asking this because sometimes, people say, oh, but I spend a lot on scaling. A $50 sheath, can I do a 25-to-1? Do you make that adjustment or not? How does that work?
We've already had some periods testing creatives in info with a 25-to-1 to make that adjustment. But when scaling, it's 1 real and 51 centavos in info. And then in Nutra, we already open up to more ad sets, right? 1,201 raise up to 1,251 raise.
Since you're going to...
Because it really has a lot to do with the average ticket. So in the Nutra vertical, you will need to spend more money to successfully make a sale.
Yes. And
in info, you'll spend less to make that sale. And you have to spend less, otherwise you won't make a profit.
Yes, I understand. But you don't have a 1-to-1 relationship, like half the budget for an average ticket?
Not that specific, no. But what we've done before was like that.
It's an adjustment you'll learn as you go.
Exactly, because what happens? We observe what works in Nutra, in this case, even in our benchmarks, so we make adjustments. But it wasn't that specific. Maybe I never stopped to think about it. It was done, but maybe not.
It happened naturally, but didn't become a process. Much happens.
It's a process, but a more fixed process in this case, right?
I see. What we used to do there, we always did 1 for 2, right? So if our average ticket is $200, we have to make at least one sale for $100 or 150 there at the maximum, right?
Yes. In this case, we set the benchmarks by offer then.
By offer, that is actually quite cool and very interesting to think about, Pax, because every single offer represents its own specific niche. And
each offer has a different backend. Each offer has different things, right? There are offers where I can extract much more on the back end. There are, for example, like I mentioned in the part about apps that have MRR, so it's because they don't know. In this case, it's a recurring payment. I can get the person to stay there for a longer time. So then I can even break even or even go negative because I'll make a profit in the second month.
I see, it's because you used to do it, but it's already something, it came from the client.
But it's already something quite different. You control a lot of data. You're doing it right to avoid a big cash burn while scaling up. And you need to understand what's going to happen in the following months, right? Yeah.
Because it's not just 1 month, right? Right? Rainbow, the chargeback, it can come even after 6 months or more.
Exactly. So if you don't calculate this data properly, you might think you're going to make money down the line and end up not making any.
Yeah, you could get a nasty surprise.
Exactly.
All right, so going back then, you really got into the details, huh? Right down to the details, huh?
All right then.
So, okay, you validated the creative. Then the next day, how many more campaigns do you launch? That creative, let's say it's perfect, man. That creative gave top metrics. Then you launch another campaign, 5, 10. If you're more aggressive, you launch a bunch at once.
How then?
Depending on the day, how do you want it?
In this case, usually as a standard process, there will be a pre-scaling phase. In the pre-scaling phase, we're going to launch around 5 or 6 campaigns with this creative to see how it performs. And in this case, I also think it's good to launch it in more than one ad account. So for example, duplicate it about 3 times within this account. Then launch at least 2 more campaigns in another account with this same creative. This is really to eliminate some variables and understand if it truly has potential for scaling so that later you can actually start increasing to more campaigns, right?
That was interesting. Yeah, what we used to do there, but I think it ends up being a lot of people end up losing that money in a way, right? But the timing, right? It's always a balancing act, isn't it? You have to, then it depends on your cash flow. We used to test on 2 accounts at the same time. We would just take, I don't know, both accounts. We would add up the results from both accounts using the tracker itself, looking at the creative instead of analyzing them separately, because sometimes the creative would perform well in one account, but not in the other. But if the metrics were so good that even when adding the positive and the negative, the result was still good, then that creative would go to scaling. In our process, so instead of running it for 1 day, then moving it to another account, I think that's your workflow, and then going to a pre-scaling phase and then scaling, we would already do it in parallel. That way it's worse financially speaking, because if it's a bad creative, you immediately lose double on 2 accounts. So for Nutra, it was something where we would take a hit, like, I don't know, a loss of 5 or 10,000 reais in a day just from testing, because Nutra is much more specific. But back in the InfoCart days, running ads was more relaxed because the financial volume was smaller. We
have done it like that, and there are really big operations that still do it. They like to do it that way. We've done it like that too, but I preferred not to go down that path. I prefer to test in a more, because we test a lot, ads. So I prefer, in testing, it runs on accounts. Accounts that are okay, accounts that have a good historical performance. It doesn't have to be the best account in the world because we have a lot of accounts. So that's not the issue. But I just don't like to run creative tests, for example, on a new account or on an account that historically has very low performance. Or a new account. I don't think that's good because then you have a very clear variable right there possibly. But there are actually both of these approaches, right?
Personally, I think yours is smarter looking at it this way, because when we started doing the math there, because in traffic, in the day-to-day, man, you want to make things happen. You
want to do it faster sometimes.
You want to do it faster. Then when I sat down once a month with the finance team and said, man, I spent, I don't know, 100, 200,000 just on testing.
Exactly.
For these last ones, if I had spent half in a smarter way, I would have increased the company's profit by 50, 100,000 reais.
Exactly.
Just by being less hasty. So there's that too, right? Yeah.
That's why we decided not to keep doing it that way. Because one of the biggest expenses today in an operation is
check
ads. Testing in general, right? So testing leads, testing VSL. But ad testing itself is usually the biggest chunk of that because you're going to make a lot of mistakes. ads to get a good ad right. And if you take, say, 100 ads, most of them won't even make it to pre-scaling.
Or
then there's another sequence there, another tier that will go to pre-scaling and won't get past that. And then comes the minority of them, which will go on to scaling. And there are still those that won't scale.
But that died in the middle of scaling.
That will die in the middle of scaling. They'll start there, but don't have the potential to really take off in sales.
Those, I think, are more dangerous.
You know, many times.
They're worse because they gave a sign of scaling, sold, I don't know, 50, 60,000. You say, man, this creative is good. So you keep trying. Do you have a process to stop trying? Like, when do you stop scaling that creative? Or do you get attached to it? How do you? I've gotten attached before.
From minimum rows. Like I said, it depends on the offer. It depends on the operational side here.
Give a real example, something that happened to you.
For example, in Nutra, for instance, there have been cases where the creative was scaling. It came from a really good track record, but at some point it started to gradually decrease its ROAS. So what do I always tell the managers? You have to look at its overall history to make a decision, but on a day-to-day basis, you need to keep an eye on it. At least the last 7 days, the last 3, and yesterday. I like the manager to understand how the
historical
behavior has been, to make decisions about whether I'm going to scale it up more now or not, or if I'm going to keep pushing it or not, you know? So it's a lot about that. So let's say if a creative is there, it's scaling, it's there with the rows. 1.6 historically, but for the past 7 days, it's been losing performance, always losing performance. And yesterday it was really bad. I have to rethink that. So that's where a lot of intuition comes in from screen time. Screen time, understanding it there really involves a lot of intuition. But for you to make the decision, if it really makes sense to keep insisting on it, because sometimes we're talking about a creative there, where just that one is already getting invested in 100, 200,000 reais a day. So you need to make good decisions, because otherwise you'll start burning through cash.
and
You'll kind of not have a stop loss. So you'll eat up all the profit you made with that creative.
so
It happens. People get really attached. And I think like everyone who has really scaled, who was already there on Facebook, probably everyone has made some bad decision in that sense. And they've already let it die, already let the creative eat up the profit,
basically gave back all the profit,
gave it back to the market,
resold to market, gave it back to
gave the profit they earned back to Facebook. So you need to have a stop loss. Got it.
what we used to do. Like we had a little rule there. If the creative, even the most validated one, loses money for 2 days in a row, discard it. And it's funny because I don't know about you guys, but it's not an exact math of, oh, it went through this hysteria and now the creative will scale infinitely.
No.
Each creative has a scaling ceiling, and until you understand that, you end up banging your head a lot. So we had creatives that would scale to 100,000, then die. There were creatives that would scale to 200, then die. And then there was this creative that sold like 2 million, a single creative. So if you take those 2 million and use it as a rule, saying no, now every validated one, because sometimes the creative, I noticed, it kept all the same metrics, but it just doesn't sell.
Yes.
So I think that's the worst. That's the one I said is the most dangerous. It's that creative that had already scaled at a certain point, then suddenly it died. But you keep looking at the secondary metrics. You say, man, everything's the same. CPC is the same. CPM is the same. But it's just not working anymore. Only the ROI got worse.
Many times this happens because Facebook starts looking for other clusters. So sometimes a specific cluster is already kind of exhausted. That audience you were selling a lot to is already starting to get saturated. And then it starts looking for other clusters. So you still have interesting secondary metrics, but it doesn't sell anymore because this audience is no longer as qualified. So you have to know how to identify that.
That brings us back to what he said at the beginning, right? Exactly. The first metric, the primary one, was something I used to emphasize a lot with managers and co-ops. But how is that possible? People don't even try to understand. Sometimes you have to understand. Sometimes you don't. You just have to accept it. Accept it and it hurts less.
That point you mentioned, for example, about the creative being heavily validated for 2 days. If it doesn't perform well, we eliminate it. We don't exactly follow that approach, but if it does poorly for a couple of days, then next time, only the best ones will be activated. The cream of the crop of campaigns that have already performed with that ad.
Oh, cool.
It's a way to identify, not to make the decision, maybe too soon to discard it, But at this point, we can really see if the performance now, if the problem with this performance is actually the creative itself, because if the best campaigns historically with it don't perform, it's probably time for that creative to die.
There are creatives that you even have to light a candle for, right?
You have to light one, then you have to thank it for the profit.
I fought the good fight.
Now let it rest.
Sometimes it needs to rest, but I created this rule just to understand. I don't think it's about being smarter, but sometimes we have to create some little rules like a stop loss for the operation, especially last year when there was a movement to delegate teams, to hire people. And there are a lot of micro processes that you do in your daily routine, just like I'm asking you here. Actually, there isn't a set process, but we do it anyway. When you delegate, you don't have that training. So it's in your head, you do it. If you have just one manager, you can pass it on to them very well. But when you start to grow, a lot of things get lost along the way. And that happened to me. I said, man, I used to keep track of everything. Like, let me check out this creative here. How did it do yesterday? How did it do over the last 7 days? You'd go into Truex and filter for yesterday or the last 7 days. Today, yesterday, but today. But when you try to do this at scale, if someone has to analyze 50 or 30 creatives, the person really has to be motivated to do it.
They do.
They have to be a very well-paid manager with commission. And I think it's not even about being well-paid. The person really has to have a lot of drive, because I think it's more about personality than money. Because there are managers who aren't that well paid. I've seen it in the market, but the guy is a real go-getter, and eventually that person will earn well. He's just not earning it right now. And there are managers who sometimes earn really well and are more laid back. There were people we hired paying a lot, and man, the guy didn't even work properly. So we had to create this rule precisely because of that, right? Because not everyone was a go-getter. We had a lot of managers there. And man, if I don't create something very simple and easy to interpret, relying on a detailed analysis from a creative guy would be ideal, but it would be a mess. We ended up sometimes creating mechanisms both for leads and for saying goodbye. For creatives, for campaigns, we'd let it run for 1 or 2 days. So since I'm an engineer, we like to create specific things. Even so, we can give feedback to the guy. Like, why did you run this creative on the 3rd day? Because that's when I'd say, man, it's already been 2 or 3 days. Damn, I ended up missing that. And at the time, there was no way to launch a campaign quickly and all that. It was more work. So really, you can even understand the guy, right? Not putting all the blame on him, because the guy would waste a lot of time launching campaigns. Like on the Bayesian scale, he had to go and study the metric parts.
But then...
Go ahead, jump in, you can talk.
Here's a point I believe is important. To begin with, nowadays, this is much easier. For example, in my operation, we even have our own dashboard that brings together all the, by the naming convention, it brings together the results from all the ad accounts. So the guy no longer needs to keep opening accounts or using some outdated trackers out there.
Those really clunky ones of mine.
Kind of clunky, where he would have to check campaign by campaign.
Yeah.
So this way, it gathers through the naming convention the results of all the campaigns. So he doesn't have much work to check this. He'll be able to see it all on one screen. He just has to click there. For example, in the last 7 days, he'll have the top creatives ranking there at best to worst, and then he'll check the last 3 days and yesterday. So there's not much work for him to check this, and from there, he'll have to make a decision.
Technology, right?
Yeah, but that's what AI is here for. People are working a lot with superficial stuff, but it's about understanding how to use it to give you direction. So, and there's another point which I believe is this: the manager really needs to be looking at the manager, in this case at the dashboard, at the tracker. Whoever is using it needs to be watching that all the time, especially if we're talking about significant budgets, because as I'm saying, if it's a less significant budget, it's different. But if we're talking about significant budgets, there's no money there to waste. You have to be responsible. The
guy has to be glued to the screen, right?
Exactly. A real manager is like that. The manager who just opens the tracker once or twice a day, like just for show. I don't buy it. To me, that's just talk.
Yeah, I don't believe it either, man. When I used to be there managing traffic, even when I was watching a movie with my girlfriend and all, I'd be like, hold on, I need to go check something real quick.
Don't slip up.
Half hour or so, you know? Every 15 minutes, you grab your Mac and open it up. You check the computer real quick, see what's going on. And then you go to a restaurant, laptop on your arm, having dinner Sunday, Saturday. So if the manager like goes 3 or 4 hours without responding, something's already wrong. The guy's not watching the campaigns. So
It has actually happened before. There was already a specific example of that in my own business operations. Just so you understand, I have a team of managers today.
Today, what does your traffic structure look like?
We have managers, but today I'm the one making the strategic decisions regarding Facebook.
So
I'm going to have calls with these managers and pass on what I believe in, because at the moment, the vision is about what will be done and how it should be done. So the management itself, since I'm talking specifically about Facebook, in this case, there's also a partner taking care of YouTube and TikTok. It's
Vitão,
Vitor.
he's invited.
Shout out to him. In this case, I'm going to have a call with these managers. We'll analyze things there and I'll make decisions about what they're supposed to do. Why? Because I realized that the more I tried to delegate, even hiring people who apparently already had experience, who had already invested millions. Also, I realized that when it came to strategy, they made decisions, not very smart decisions,
Stupid decisions.
relatively low cognitive level decision-making processes.
Low cognitive level. There are people who are impermeable, man, to cognition.
So, and it's a trend I've been seeing a lot in the market now, which is like this. The companies that used to delegate a lot, for example, like, oh no, I hired a manager and I just send them there. For him, like, here are the creatives, here's the copy, scale it, just scale it. In general, these operations, as I mentioned, the sessions still exist, but they're not performing as well as they used to. Meanwhile, most of the best operations, the ones that have scaled up more, the owner knows exactly what's being done. He knows everything that's going on.
What, all this happening?
He knows everything that's going on. He has complete command over it. He's not going to launch any more campaigns because it doesn't make sense.
Yes.
There are people to hire and there are tools to make things easier. So it doesn't make sense for him to be launching the campaign himself. But he knows what's going on. He sets the strategy. Here, man, we're talking about significant budgets. So there's no reason for him not to keep an eye on that. If it's 80-20, which is what I believe today, he needs to be on top of it. So I think in many of these cases, these companies that are scaling a lot, the owner, he understood that what made him change his life back at the beginning, which was him
Being
paying closer attention there. He had to go back to doing more of that. Because that thing of just delegating, oh, I'll just hire a manager here and he'll scale it for me. That doesn't really work.
very well. I will even bring up a counterpoint. I agree with you. There's a counterpoint, but it doesn't replace it either. Like, oh, if you pay well, offer a bigger commission. The guy will naturally pay more attention, right? Because the guy will, it's about his profile, right? If the guy has the profile of wanting, if he's ambitious and obsessed with it, he'll go for it. But even so, thinking from a psychology perspective, really. Now, this is a psychologist moment. He won't feel the pain of losing.
No.
So that's it. Only the owner of the operation feels that. Like when you launch a campaign and you lose 20,000 rees, it's a direct punishment to your pocket. You say, damn, I lost 20,000 rees, 50,000 rees. The manager, he lost, but he lost his commission, the potential earnings. So psychologically speaking, losing money directly versus losing out on potential earnings, it's completely different. It's just like when you trade, right? We talked about this a lot. Or in a casino, the guy took 1,000 rees and turned it into 10. And then he lost 9 and was left with 1,000. A lot of times the guy says, oh, I didn't lose anything. Because he'll say, oh, I didn't lose what I put in. And it's the same thing, right? The manager, sometimes there are several cases of managers who were good, but because of a slip up, right? Which can happen. Or sometimes even because of this lack of psychological motivation. The guy had a significant loss and the owner of the operation was left with it. Then now, and this is real talk, okay, guys? Like, what do I do with this guy? Deduct it from his commission, but if I deduct it from his commission, the guy will go 6 months without receiving any commission. If the guy goes 6 months without receiving commission, is he going to stay motivated or is he going to quit and go to another operation? So the fact that the owner is really getting back into the trenches, I see that as a huge differentiator because it's just like you said. Nowadays, from what I know, the biggest ones, when we say biggest, I mean 1 million a day, over 1,000 sales, 2,000 sales. The guys are there in the day-to-day, rolling up their sleeves. Obviously with a senior manager by their side, not a junior anymore. I have a manager and I have a junior manager and I'm just going to analyze the targets they ask to move to the next day. On the contrary, the guy has a senior manager under him and he's right there on top of the guy paying well too, so he can really run things, the operation.
The difference is that months ago, some time ago, the senior used to run the whole department on their own. And today the senior is there reporting back, often directly to the owner of the operation, who is keeping a very close eye on things, observing, understanding patterns as well. Not just shifting the responsibility onto the senior.
The fact is that the market is changing. The market has changed a lot in the past year, and whoever doesn't adapt
will be...
And
we see cases out there, a lot of people complaining. And usually what I notice is this: companies that are very hands-off, complaining a lot about performance, complaining that they can't run on Facebook anymore, can't scale, and so on. But if you're not paying attention, and if you don't have really, really good managers, heads, people who are truly excellent, many times you're just relying on information that an unqualified employee of yours is bringing you. So you're not paying attention, the person doesn't have enough qualifications, and if you make decisions based on that, you're going to make mistakes. So it's the
input of information is bad.
The input of information is already bad. So basically, in these cases where we're saying the owner started paying closer attention again, it's worked much better because they're able to make decisions that are closer to what's actually happening. Good.
Well, everyone, I think I'll wrap things up here. About time, right? Good podcast session. We shouldn't tell everything here, right? Actually, I'm joking. It is to tell everything, but Rodrigo was tired. 4 days of event. I won't take up any more of his time. And I think that's it, man. Do you have any message for the audience, for traffic managers? Do you want to share your Instagram too? Talk to the camera, talk to me, whichever you prefer.
So speaking today, both to traffic managers directly and to business owners, things aren't likely to get any easier. I don't believe in that. But they are possible. While a lot of people are complaining, there are people scaling millions a day, things that have never happened before. So you see how it is. There are counterpoints. So things are possible. You have to look for the best answers. You have to expand your network. You have to test things out. And that's it.
What's your Instagram?
And here we have Rodrigo Michelon. Type Michelon.
Michelon, put it up there on the screen.
There.
His handle will show up there. It'll also appear in the description. That's it, guys. This is the first recorded episode of Segredos do Tráfego. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any feedback, send it to me on Instagram. Hey, you could have asked about this. Little by little, we'll keep improving. Follow along. Follow the channel. Follow on Instagram, directchats.ai. The channel is DirectChats. I think it's official, but just look for DirectChats. You'll find it, and see you next time.